Marcin Antusiewicz, witam Państwa na kolejnej debacie Forum Dialog Plus imienia Andrzeja Godlewskiego. Dziś będziemy rozmawiać o wyniku wyborów do Parlamentu Europejskiego, jakie one mają przełożenie w ogóle na europejską politykę w Polsce, w Niemczech, ale także we wszystkich innych krajach Unii Europejskiej. Jak zawsze spotykamy się dzięki partnerom, czyli Fundacji Ars Republica, Fundacji Współpracy Polsko-Niemieckiej i Fundacji Konrada Adenauera w Polsce. Dzisiaj nasza debata odbędzie się w języku angielskim, w związku z tym będziemy trochę zmieniać języki. Mogą Państwo zadawać pytania na czacie w dowolnym języku, jakim chcecie. Ja będę je próbował integrować w naszą rozmowę I zacznę od specjalnego gościa z Saksonii, pan Georg Milbrand, który jest byłym premierem tego kraju. Schönen guten Tag nach Dresden. Der ehemalige Ministerpräsident von dem Freien Staat Sachsen ist heute zu Gast zugeschaltet bei uns. Hallo, schönen guten Tag.
Guten Tag.
Bardzo się cieszę, że jest z nami ponownie pani profesor Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene z Uniwersytetu Warszawskiego, politolożka. Dzień dobry pani profesor.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
I wracamy na zachód, może nie bezpośrednio do Saksonii, ale po sąsiedzku do Wrocławia, bo tam z nami jest pani doktor Justyna Bokajło, ekonomistka, politolożka z Uniwersytetu Wrocławskiego. Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
Dzień dobry. And let's start our debate with switch languages. Because the outcome of the elections, general elections in the European Union, was very scary for many people in the European Union. But what we see right now, that we will have the new old president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, from Conservative Party. Then we will have the new president of the European Council, Antonio Costa from Portugal, a social democrat. And then we will have the new high representative for foreign policy and security policy, Kaja Kallas, a liberal one from Estonia. So, Mr. Milbrand, when we see the political center in the European Union is still standing, so is it any reason for panic?
No, it's not a reason for panic. There was a move to the right wing, and it will have some influence in the future, but the majority in the European Parliament is still stable. The traditional parties that are the liberals, as you said, the Christian Democrats, are the Conservative European People's Party, and the Socialists have 432 seats out of 720. So that is a comfortable absolute majority. And if you add the Greens as well, who as the newcomer are part of a lot of arrangements in the European Parliament, that is another 54 seats, makes together 486, nearly 500 out of 720. So there is not a danger that the right wing will become a majority, but they can influence decisions and votes in the European Parliament, because often the factions in the European Parliament are not voting by the party line. They have no European parties, they have only party families, and often there are national and other issues who are influencing the vote. So it's not guaranteed that this majority of nearly 500 seats is always working. And therefore, we have to look very carefully from decision to decision or vote to vote to get all on board.
You're saying that will have influence on the European politics. So in what way? What do you expect?
Well, I think the new parliament has to do a lot more concerning immigration. I think one of the main issues of the European election was the issue of migration, loss of control, and because the protection of the border is an EU issue, it must be solved in the end, not only by the national states, member states, but by the EU as well. And I think there will be a lot of attempts to change the system. Whether they are successful, we will see. The other issue will be the Green Deal. The old Commission, von der Leyen won was supported by the Greens, because at that time the three traditional parties had not a majority, because the socialists and the Greens, especially the socialists, did not want Mrs. von der Leyen, especially the German socialist. So they were. She was elected by the Greens, and the deal was the Green Deal to do more about ecology and the transformation into a sustainable economy.
Yeah,
but I think this issue will have not this priority in the future that it has had in the past.
Yeah, Prime Minister, let's talk about the Green Deal in a second, but let's stay by the migration policy. When I look at the Polish migration policy, even under the government of Donald Tusk, and when I look at the migration policy of the government of Saxony, so it's going to be, not a big change, I would say, for the government in Warsaw and for the local government in Saxony.
Not for the local governments, but you know that we have a net migration of 500,000 and more per year, in some years 1 million. And the infrastructure is under heavy stress, the schools, the social system, and the acceptance in the population for more migrants, especially on migrants who cannot easily integrated into the labor market, is diminishing. And therefore, we have to find solutions to fight the far-right parties, because that is their main issue. They say, we are against Europe, Europe cannot deliver, and therefore we will go to the national states. That is a mistake. The national states cannot solve the problem in Europe, but the national states, the member states, together with the European Union, can change their policies, and they must radically change the policy, because at the moment there is no real control of migration.
I see. Professor Minkowska-Norkiene, you have been researching on the European Union and its policies for years. When you saw the results on 10th of June, let's say, what did you think about it? What direction is taking the European Union right now?
Yeah, so at first I was actually quite happy that it wasn't as bad as it had seemed. However, I have to tell you that then I read this article in The Guardian of Timothy Garton-Ash, who said, don't let anyone tell you that it's not so bad as it seems. And then I thought, okay, so we should search for some actually quite tricky and scary aspects in all that. And, I'm quite, I would say, calm as regards the European Parliament, because indeed, as Mr. Murat properly pointed out, the majority can be rather stable, supposing that there will be no surprises, because, because it was also properly mentioned that the Greens might be here, I would say, a little bit problematic. But on the other hand, they are trapped now because the Green Deal is really threatened. And if they don't cooperate with the European People's Party, they may have a serious problem with even maintaining the already achievements of the Green Deal. However, I see a much larger problem elsewhere, and it's obviously the Council. So those results, the European Parliament elections are very specific in a sense that they are a kind of plebiscite, we could say, regarding national governments. And obviously, we can say that there were certain messages sent in France, in Germany. In Poland, we tend to say, wow, we have actually rescued our democracy. But if we put together the results of Law and Justice and of Confederation, we have almost 50% of the votes, right? So it's not so good, because even Rassemblement National gained 34 almost, and AfD 16. In Poland, we can say that the populist far-right parties, they gained almost 50% altogether. But still, democracy has its paradoxes, and one of them is exactly that one, that we are the green island, despite the fact that 50% of the society is far-right populists represented, because it's not exactly that way. But you know what I see, which is the most scary, just to make the long story short, regarding the parliament now coming back from the council, is the fact that there is a huge responsibility, which I'm absolutely not so sure if is even bearable, on the back of the European People's Party and also potential coalition members, namely Renew Europe, that has lost a lot, also socialists that haven't lost much, and the Greens. There's a huge responsibility for rebuilding cordon sanitaire against the far-right parties in the European Parliament, because if it's not the case, it can be very easily.
Yes, it's nothing new, right? What are we talking about?
It's nothing new, but it's not necessarily that obvious, because Ursula von der Leyen has been accused recently. She will most probably be re-elected, but if you watched those debates of Spitzenkandidaten, then you probably had this impression that she was attacked mainly by the non-populist, non-far-right parties for flirting with Meloni and who knows whom else. So, if she seeks for a majority among the populists, this is the worst decision she may make. So she has to, being in EPP and being backed by EPP, she has to really rather opt for sticking to the left. And so this is also a big question. If EPP is really willing to shift to the left rather than going where everyone expects the whole European Parliament to go, which is shifting right.
I see that Mr. Miliband wants to comment.
Well, please remember that...
let me just allow one follow-up question to Professor Minkowska-Norkiene. Please, then give Ursula von der Leyen an advice. How can she, secure her majority on the European Council without Meloni and without Orban?
Well, it's not really about the council, so she can do it in the European Parliament. Now it's the first test that she will have, namely the voting for her candidacy. If she now shows that she's not seeking support in ECR, so European Conservative and reformists, then she will send a clear signal. I don't need populists. And then, of course, she will, on the one hand, she will make quite angry Meloni, who will hope on a lot of, let's say, different gains from the EPP and from Ursula von der Leyen. But on the other hand, she will send a clear message to the Greens and the Socialists and, of course, to Renew Europe that she's ready to rescue this a bit more left-oriented democracy in the European Union. But the very last thing I want to say is about also splitting the populists, the far-right populists. So the more split they are, the better. But let's not be delusional about their lack of cooperation on matters which can be really destructive for the European Union. I don't think it will be Ukraine, because in Ukraine we really have internal divisions among the populists, and I don't think that Law and Justice, for example, would risk bucking those pro-Russian parties. This is impossible, in my opinion, even though I'm very far from praising peace for anything, Law and Justice. However, let's not forget that there will be some alliances on the side of far-right populists in the European Parliament, which will strongly, let's say, undermine the hitherto achievements of, in particular, two things, namely the Green Deal and migration, let's say, pact.
Yeah, before we're going to Wrocław for the very first time, we're going back to Saxony. Prime Minister Miliband, please.
Well, please remember that Mrs. von der Leyen was elected 5 years ago only with the votes of Orban and PiS, because within the traditional party, especially the socialists, they didn't want Mrs. von der Leyen. So the story is, if the traditional pro-European parties, which are the pillar of pillars of the EP, the socialists, the conservatives, and the liberals stay together, then it's no problem. But the problem is that part of the socialists and part of the liberals, but more the socialists, are not willing to support her because there is no socialist party. It's only a party family, and they are voting according national priorities, and that is the real danger. So in the end, then she has to look for other votes, and I think don't think that she is looking to Orban or Kaczynski. She is looking, of course, to Meloni, because Meloni is the prime minister of the third greatest country in Europe, and if France is destabilized, then we have to cooperate with Italy, Germany, with Italy, to save the European Union, because there must be an agreement between the big or great or big countries in Europe to stabilize the European Union in the coming years, because we have a lot of problems. It's not only Ukraine, it's trade, it's maybe Trump, it's China. So we have to look that the basis is stable, then the right wing will not have an influence. And Meloni is a different case. We should discuss it separately.
Yeah, and we will. But if I do remember,
I disagree, but that's maybe something for the further discussion, because I strongly disagree. I would say that socialists, it's not that they traditionally vote for or against and so on. I think it's just a matter of the price. And the question is whether Ursula von der Leyen is ready rather to pay high price to socialists, or if she's rather prepared to pay the price to Meloni and co. So I would say that's exactly the choice. It's exactly the core, not necessarily, going to Meloni, but maybe rather proposing something really convincing to the socialists.
Yeah, but the mathematics is wrong. Yeah. The socialists have 140 seats. Meloni has 20. That's the problem. The disagreement within the socialist group. If the socialists are united, then there is no need for any cooperation with whomever. Yeah. The problem is within the Socialist Party. It's not the conservatives or the liberal and the socialists. In most of the time, the majority of the socialists were in favor of cooperating with von der Leyen, but national parliamentarians, especially from Germany, were the problem in the past.
Yeah, and if I do remember well, the Greens didn't back von der Leyen 5 years ago in the European Parliament.
Yeah, so, but they promised to support her this time, it seems.
They promised last time, I remember that very well.
Yeah, because they got burnt heavily.
They didn't back her at the end in the European Parliament. So if she wanna stay the president of the European Commission, she needs majority, right? Dr. Justyna Bukajło, Wrocław right now. You are an economist, so how do you see with your economist's mind of the outcome of these European elections?
No, okay. May I just add something to the previous conversation, because it was really interesting. And when I analyzed what you've said, I have also some views on this, what happened in European Parliament elections. So if I can, yeah? Mr. Moderator?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, right. So what is good, the largest group in your EP as EPP, Socialist Democrats, and Liberal Renew, significantly weakened by Macron, but still exist, their position is not changing. What is warning signal for European politics, which may not be blocked by delay by the far right, but the right will strong interfere in the constructing of European politics. Such project as deepening and expansion of European Union, the Green Deal, strengthening the Eurozone, or EU cohesion and unity will be probably slowed down. The second thing what I want to set is the increased presence of the far-right parties in European Parliament may result in greater pressure to reform EU institutions and transfer more competition back to a member state, so not at the EU level, but to the member state. And what more, the impact of national election victories of the rights of the far right and governments coming from this group. For example, in Finland, Sweden, Italy, Netherlands, and so on, the far right is the part of the coalition and has people in high government position. So as the number of right-wing national politicians grows, the landscape of the European politics change affects what happened in the European Council and the Council of Ministers, as is there that the heads and the states and the governments meet to set the political agenda and adopt EU legislation. So in this point, it could right wings could be interrupt to constructing European policy. Anyway, the right wings parties' ability to have the real impact will depend on their degree of unity,
Okay.
and we know that we have the problem. And what more, because you spoke already about it, what I can observe, and I think it's really important to stress it. So it's a dangerous and reversal of the traditional trend in the following issue. Political parties usually aim to win over the so-called mediana voter. This voters' preferences are exactly in the middle of the political spectrum of all voters. So that means in practice that the political system strives for stability and political parties try to attract the mediana voter and those avoid extremism. Meanwhile, what is starting to shape European policies, and you said about already about the strategy of Ursula von der Leyen, the Central Party started to beginning to adopt extremist rhetoric. As you said, EEP is striving to cooperate with European conservatives and reformists, as evidenced by conciliatory meetings initiated by Ursula von der Leyen with Meloni. That you already said. And another politics and another steps in the European policy are also quite moved to the right side. The same is with the migration policy. I'm not a specialist, but what I'm observed in 2015-2016, migration will intensify.
Let's talk, Dr. Bokało. Let's talk. It's not a lecture, okay?
Yeah, but what I want to stress that. The some proposition from the European Union and some proposition of the shaping of the European policy could go to the right side and could taking some more right wings narration or activities. So I don't know if you agree with me, but I saw this kind of I have this kind of feeling like that.
Yeah, the European People's Party is always a very good issue to discuss, but don't forget it that a smear of Robert Fico from Slovakia was for decades a member of SD, and we didn't talk about it. Okay, let's talk about the outcome of the European elections for the national politics, and let's start with Germany, because what has happened in France, we just observing that right now. We're gonna see what's happened on Sunday. Prime Minister Milbrandt, what does it mean that this result in Germany, and for the general elections next year, and for the elections in Saxony in 2 months?
Well, I think that is the main issue we have to discuss, not the influence in the European Parliament and on the European Commission, but the trends in the member states. This will maybe change Europe, and France will be the first case. If there is, for instance, a prime minister of the Rassemblement National, it will be very difficult to find compromises with them and to improve and develop the European policy. Coming to Germany, at the moment, the AfD, Alternative for Germany, has, according to the polls and the outcome of the European election, between 15 and 20%. At the moment, near at 15 and 20 because of the scandals in the party, but that can change. 20% is possible. That is not a majority in the Bundestag, but what we see at the moment is that we have a traffic light coalition. The Liberals, the Socialists, and the Greens have no majority in the polls as well as in the European Parliament. Altogether, the government has at the moment 30% of the votes, and even the CDU, EPP member, has 31. So in the moment there is no support of the Scholz government by the population, and their stress in the coalition, because they are. It's nearly impossible to find compromises on the next budget. That will be a huge problem. So I think in the end, Germany will not develop further. The solution would be the general election, the outcome of the next general election that is in fall next year. And then we'll have some new solutions, new coalition, which not will include the AfD, but the CDU has to look to allies, and that can either be the Greens, the Socialists, and or the Liberals. But I think the Liberals are will be too small to find a majority. So it's Socialists and Greens. And by this, the center of the political center will move a little bit to the right and to solutions of the right. I'm talking about especially reform of the welfare state, as well as migration. That will be the new issues in the future. Coming to the states, there is a divide between East and West. In the West, the AfD has normally less than 50%, between 10 and 15%. In the East, they have up to 30-35%. And in Saxony, the last polls, the outcome of the European election were near to 35 and to 30. And that means that in the election, the regional elections in a few months, there will be either number one or number two by seats in the Saxon parliament. And the second or the first will be the CDU, and the same will apply to the other East German states which will have elections, that is Brandenburg and Thuringia.
Yeah.
And the real danger is a three-party parliament in Saxony as in Thuringia, with the Christian Democrats on number two, the AfD number two or number one, and no traditional party, but the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, the Alliance Sarah Wagenknecht, which is a new party which gets at the moment polls up to 20%. And that is a mixture of the old communists and new nationalistic elements. And they will be number three. And so a coalition, if what we have declared, the Christian Democrats will not have a coalition with the AfD, then they must cooperate with a mixture of old communists and nationalists now in the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, because if you have only three parties in the Landtag, in the regional parliament, there is no other possibility, and that has some similarities to France.
Yeah. So
the only difference is that the center still is much more stronger in Saxony or in Germany than in France. But these three elements, extreme left, extreme right, and more or less strong or weak center, that is the problem of the future for us all.
I see. So you're suggesting the minority government with the back of Sarah Wagenknecht, right?
No, minority governments are not very popular in Germany. It could be a coalition or maybe a minority government, but so far as I know, Mrs. Wagenknecht, she will be in government. So I think she is not satisfied by supporting the government. They will have power as well. But let's discuss this in September when we know the election. But this is a problem in East Germany, so that indirectly the AfD will change the political landscape.
Yeah,
and probably in the next step it will influence the West as well.
Yeah, and I would say not the AfD is changing the political landscape, but the people, because this is like up to the people, right? And Professor Minkowska-Norkiene, we have heard your criticism on Ursula von der Leyen to deal with Meloni and with Orban. That was quite clear. And but the Europeans have spoken. That's the democracy in action. So
exactly. You see, that's where I strongly disagree with this perception that the people elected far right because their perception is far right. That's absolutely a nonsense. I'm also a sociologist.
Why do they want?
I'm gonna make it clear. But before I do that, because Mr. Milbrandt said that Smer belonged to European socialists. We have seen recently, within the last few days, we saw, this strange alliance of fascist or strongly going towards fascism, Orban and ANO, and also FPÖ. So just to make it clear, Orban was in EPP, ANO was in Renew Europe. So, it's not only socialists that have this type of a sin on the back. But coming back to what the Europeans actually want, you know what? They want an offer, which far right simply give them. And if you were to tell me really what kind of offer was sent by the European left party?
Just allow me the follow-up question, but that's exactly the democracy. A political party is making an offer, people can take it or they can reject it. And
exactly. But if you want to win the elections being a Democrat and you want to beat up the populists, you have to make a counter offer. Yeah. If you just take a look at them and think, which postulates we might actually sort of adopt or copy so that we get closer to what people might need, then you don't win the elections. You need to have a counter offer.
But they want to win the election. You are an expert. You are not a politician. So this
exactly. So you want, but you want me to, let's say, give the advice to the politicians. Okay, Europe has to turn left because the expectations of the society are left. If you take a look at what Angela Merkel actually did throughout her terms, despite being a leader of a conservative party in the largest country in the European Union, well, she fulfilled the postulates also of the left-oriented parts of the societies. Now, when we take a look at what the Europeans expect, they expect someone really giving them the answer why they have to, for example, being in the province and not having a bus or a train, why they have to now resign of their old diesels so that they stay where they are and don't move at all, because there is no counter offer. Furthermore, there is no communication policy which would tell them, look, if you change the heating system, you'll get reimbursed. So in East Germany, for example, when you have this AfD success, it's not entirely only due to migration. I think it's a conglomerate of disappointment with the European Green Deal, which has put a lot of pressure on, in particular, middle class and also younger generation, that has no possibilities also regarding the housing. I mean, this is the generation which cannot afford a normal apartment or a house. And now what do you hear from the socialists? Oh, we will do our best to provide you with that, but what are the postulates? Well, they are not really leftist. They are something like a kind of mixture of maybe subsidizing the, some investors who build new apartments and new houses. There is no clear policy. Even in Berlin, it didn't work out, although there was a huge debate, and it's on a much smaller scale. So we have to have strong signals sent from the left-oriented parties about how to basically satisfy the left needs of the society, while the far-right parties, they give them any answer at all. And it's the answer, well, it's the migrants that you should put the blame on, although we all know basically that migrants provide for growth of GDP, which then can be redistributed among the society. The problem is that no one has on the left side or central left side, or even regarding EPP, that is actually more opting for copying far-right ideas instead of leaning a little bit more to the left and checking what is there to be proposed to the Europeans, okay? So I see here the biggest problem, that there is no clear and really digestible, so communicating with really clearness and obviousness offer on this a little bit more left side of the political scene, not in the European Union, but in the member states of the European Union. Okay. But the worst possible idea is to go for right.
Please let Dr. Bokało speak a bit as well. But maybe this is one comment, because maybe this is a question of perception, because don't forget about it, that Alternative for Germany, Alternative für Deutschland, has granted during the Angela Merkel's chancellery. So, and they named themselves as an alternative to Angela Merkel. So when you're speaking this is an alternative, the Angela Merkel policy.
Angela Merkel didn't solve all the problems of East Germany. She just she wasn't typically conservative. In a sense, like, for example, legalization of the gay marriages and so on and so forth. I'm speaking just about that. I'm not saying she solved. I'm far from being her big fan, just to make it clear, okay?
I see that the left parties, they don't doing well right now in the European Union. This is like, I'm not sure if it's really the alternative. Dr. Bokało, what's your view on that?
Hello?
Yes, it's working.
About what happened in Germany, that's the question.
Germany, Europe, and what's the alternative for the right-wing parties?
So my reflection is that what happened in the European area, what happened in the national area, I mean the strengthening of the far rights, what was it was predictable. Why? Because the Europe, it's tired of the mainstream. So mainstream becoming less concrete, less responsive to the needs of the average citizens. So mainstream focuses on the things like, for example, climate, like ecology, while people are struggling with high prices of the food and high prices of the energy, fearing the migrants we will invade and change the status quo, fearing of the war, of the treaty of Russia. So for this moment, the right wings are the answer for the average people, the average citizen of the country on this kind of problems with migration, with big deal, with Green Deal, with economic situation. And what is important for the Germany, for example, so it's this election confirmed that people are unsatisfied of German action of German coalition, because entire coalition, SPD, Greens and FDP, all parties suffered defeat. So the FDP has become the strongest party in East Germany, and also not in Germany, but also in France. But I'm also thinking what's happened in France, why that was such a big pushing to the side of Marine Le Pen political party. And I'm thinking that first reason is the reaction of Macron's of losing the election, which only gives European society more reason to believe that the mainstream cannot cope and has no solution. What Macron did we can see as weaknesses or a lack of solution for the future of the France and the future of the Europe. We need to remember that France is the third biggest economy in European Union. So as you asked about the market.
I think the second now in the European Union.
Second, yeah, sorry, the second after Germany.
After the Brexit.
The Brits are out.
The second after Germany. So what happened in France, that happened also in European Union. It's a
but what's happening in France, it's happening for years. Marine Le Pen has received last presidential election about 45%. And this is exactly the result we have seen last month. So it's nothing new. Prime Minister Milbrand, there is a question from Mr. Gontarz on a new Green Deal. We get the question here, I guess. I hope you can see the question. He's asking, why did even the democratic side turn to populism and criticism of the Green Deal instead of looking for simple, convincing arguments in favor of the green transformation? It is more attractive to deny the Earth in spherical and deny scientific evidence of global warming. What if most of Europe joins the QAnon movement from the United States? What's your answer?
Well, I'm in favor of an ecological transformation of our economy, and I did believe that the climate is influenced by CO2 emissions. The problem is how to deal with this problem, and there are two ways to do it. One way is to have by order. You allow or forbid things and try to steer the economy to the transformation process, which is in the end a very costly process, and the politicians are not able to steer your economy. The alternative is to do it by other economic methods. One could be subventions, but subventions you have not so much money. In the end, you have to raise taxes. So subvention is not a solution as well. The third element which we have in Europe is CO2 emission certificates. And if you include the whole economy in the CO2 emission certificates, then you can reduce the CO2 emissions according to the emission rights very easily. And then the economy will find a way that is less costly. And we have this institution or this solutions only for certain parts of the industry where it works very well. We have it not in agriculture, we have it not in housing, that means heating, and we have it not in traffic. And the problem that we have now is that we have promised in the last election on the European level, as well as in the German national elections in 2021, that this transformation process is a win-win process. Maybe in the future, not in the near future, it might be, but at the moment it is very costly because you have to change the old infrastructure, the old production methods, and to write them off, and you have to build up a new infrastructure, and that is costly. It costs money, and you cannot spend it for others. In the economy as a whole. So for decades, I would say two to 3 decades, this Green Deal costs money. And in the end, there will be improvement of the environment, maybe after 30 years, 20 years. But this improvement of the environment is not located in Europe, where we make our policies, but worldwide. So I'm in favor of this policy, CO2 emissions, to reduce CO2 emissions, but we have to be very open and very frank to the population, and do not tell them it's a win-win situation. It's not a win-win situation in the short run. In the short run means less consumption, less private investment, less government investment to finance this transition.
Okay.
And when we talk the difference, when it's a win-win situation, we get some money back. We earn money in the near future, and the people see that we don't earn money, but their bill is increasing. Then they lose the political parties are losing support. And the problems in all democracy is governments do not win. They can only lose. And the opposition can only win if the government has not the right solution. What we have is we elect politicians who should solve problems. Real problems, or sometimes also problems which people think they are there. And if their problems are not solved correctly, properly, then the problems will search new politicians, not only better politicians. And that is the situation at the moment. We have to find answers, real answers, and not only words. For what is going on, we have to face the challenges which are before us: demography, trade, economy, ecology. That are the real issues we have to look at. And what we had done in the past is we had done nothing also without paying money to make people happy. Come to Germany. We have a problem in the labor market. We have not enough labor, trained labor for our economy because of demography. During this time where we have this deficit, the government or the socialists are talking about earlier retirement, 4 days a week, or increasing social benefits. So then in the end, the socialists have lost their real electorate. There are no labor workers in the socialist movement or in the trade unions. The trade unions are the leaders are coming from the universities. The workers are voting for the AfD in Europe, in West Germany, and especially in East Germany. So the answers which the socialists gave to the changing environment, not only ecological environment, social economic environment, were wrong.
Yeah.
And they had not convinced the voters, and therefore they have to change their policy, like they did it, for instance, in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
There the socialists made a totally different policy than on the European continent, because they feel that they are losing their real base. And what the situation is at the moment, they have to gain them back. And that is much more difficult than losing them than before. That's the real issues we have to talk in Europe and in Germany. And when we are able to solve problems, and when we are talking about the truth, the real truth, and not making some illusion, then we have a chance to turn the policy and to push back the right-wing populists, as well as the right-wing, the left-wing populists, which are still there, which has similar solution, like in France, a part of this new popular front is extreme left, and has no solution for me as well. So it's not only the right wing which are on the wrong way, it's a left wing as well, because the center is not able to have a real, policies which convince people and which especially solve problems.
Okay, 5 minutes left, but I want to just add one thing, that the president of the German Bundestag from SPD, Barbel Bas, has this working class background. It's not that, the all leaders of the Social Democrats, they have a just academic background, right? Dr. Bokaiwo, just 1 minute, you comment.
She's in a minority. If you look at the leadership, and even the presidents of the trade unions come from the university, and no longer from the working class.
Absolutely. From the University of Wrocław comes Dr. Bokaiwo. You comment 1 minute time on the future of the Green Deal.
Member state government has not succeeded in convincing their citizens of the importance of climate and sustainable development. Sorry, that's my talk. And also the last survey conducted in June on the focal data platforms shows that what is important to voters are economic issues. That's the first. The second, fighting against inflation. The third, problem with immigration, then military security, and climate is coming last. So what I think in this situation, the Green Deal is already dead. So also the mainstream parties changes mind according to some elements of the Green Deal. What is also important for the European Union, somehow of the reforms need to be implemented, because we need a Green Deal. Why? Because to be honest, European Union economy is generally losing its attractiveness and competitiveness. So the strength is, especially in the relation to the USA and China, we need to focus on reducing at first bureaucracy, completing the internal market, which is blocked by, for example, technical barriers such as Professor Milbert already said, certification procedures, and also we need to find the balance between industrial competitiveness and ecology. And this will be the answer for the question. In this, So nowadays, in Green Deal reminds us that something negative is coming from the European Union, because also the narration is negative, that because of the Green Deal, we are losing the working place, labor markets, and so on and so on. So the second thing is the more popular and more not so negative, but more positive narration towards the people, what they can gain to implement the sustainable development.
We have 2 minutes and 1 minute for the answer from Professor Minkowska-Norkiene. Marcin Święcicki, president of European Movement Forum, is asking, what is going to happen to the EP resolution to change treaties, the future of the new treaty? How do you see that? 1 minute time to answer.
Okay, so regarding the question of the reform of the European Union, well, it will not be particularly high on the agenda due to a few reasons. First of all, if it's strongly connected to the question of enlargement, then we can lose actually impetus in supporting Ukraine and in, let's say, going further with enlargement, because it will be strongly bound with a future reform which has, let's be honest, a lot of enemies on the side, of course, of the populists, in particular far-right populists, who opt rather for national sovereignty than giving more powers to the European Parliament or to broadening the scope of qualified majority voting in the Council. But I would like to just finally agree with the Prime Minister of so Mr. Miliband, because what I see is that indeed the wrong answers, they come from so many sides. Look, the question of, for example, Germany and labor force, it's answered by AfD by let's stop migration. I mean, this is the worst idea you can have if you want to improve the situation on the labor market. So why do people still choose this answer rather than any other answer? Plus, where is CDU, CSU in all this? Huh? So if the socialists and the AfD give the worst possible answers, then the mainstream middle, or I don't know, center should give the proper answer, which it can address to a large number of people, in particular to youngsters, because I think that they have been forgotten. In particular, young men, something has happened that they get attracted by AfD, by, like, you know, patriotic identity matters and so on and so forth. I think that in order for them to get back, let's say, the faith into mainstream parties, we need to really have a good offer that will be really labor market bound, plus it will have something about identity in it. And I don't think that this old conservative type of offer is really well adjusted to, in particular, young men. But the very final thing is, you know, with Green Deal, people, there is a theory, finite pool of worry. When people gain new worry, they forget about the old one. So maybe the climate change has been forgotten because we have, you know, Russia and so on and so forth. We have to properly communicate, and politicians in particular have to properly frame the problems, okay? Like when I hear that it's Ukraine and the European Union to be blamed for the problems of farmers, I think that something has gone really wrong in communication, that Russia is never mentioned. It's Russia who basically put us into all these problems. The EU could be a solution, but who out of the people you know around, who puts this problem this way? That, yeah, it's Russia who manipulates the prices. It's Russia who did the wrong things about stealing the grains, about putting the grains on the market illegally, and so on and so forth. But now the solution may be on the side of the European Union. No, what we hear is that the EU is to be blamed and Ukraine is to be blamed. For God's sake, you are there, politicians, experts, we are there to tell the truth. This is our task. So why don't we do that sufficiently and really enough?
Now my mic is working again. We did that right now. Once again, time is up. Thank you very much to the political panel. Thank you very much for watching. Liebe Grüße nach Dresden. Thank you very much, profesor Renata Minkowska-Norkienke. Dziękuję bardzo. Wszystkiego dobrego. Pozdrowienia do Wrocławia, do Krystyna Bokajło. Bardzo Państwu dziękuję za tę gorącą dyskusję. I was a hot debate, wasn't it, right? But it's a really hot topic and many topics. Thank you very much. Wszystkiego dobrego Państwu życzymy. Do widzenia.
Do widzenia.
Dziękujemy za zaproszenie. Do widzenia.
Do widzenia.